A big hello to everyone out there. Hope you guys are doing fine. So, how's your prep going for CAT? I hope by now you're more comfortable with your RCs. और मुझे पता है आपने कम से कम तो भी 15 या 20 एपिसोड्स इस सीरीज के देख लिए होंगे. We are nearing 100, so that's another achievement. It's going to be a milestone for you as well as for me. अच्छा, इसके बाद if you want to go a notch higher, please move on to Eon. Eon RCs are there. So that's another series. And if you feel that you're still struggling with your RCs, if you're like, you have not yet managed to master all the points, all the techniques, I think you need to go back and watch some more episodes from this series. So let's say you have watched about 10, थोड़ा सा उसको increase करके 10 और देख लो. चलिए, वो सब बातें तो होती रहती हैं. But I'm sure you're excited and all agog for the topic today. So, क्या है आज का टॉपिक आपको बताती हूँ. चलिए, ये सारे पॉइंट्स तो आपको पता ही हैं. इन्हीं पे हमारा आरसी टिका हुआ है ना. बिना मेन आइडिया के you just cannot expect to nail your answers. Most of the answers are connected with that. और बाकियों का क्या ही बताऊं. I have repeatedly emphasized the importance of these points. So, yep, this is what we are going to do. A second China shock. So, what is the shock? And by the way, you know this, right? That there won't be any title given in your CAT RC. You have to find out the main idea. You have to understand the topic that is being discussed. So, genre here is macroeconomic analysis. Economics के जो points हैं, जो concepts हैं, जो मैंने आपको बताया है. Please try to understand, try to learn, try to read more on those concepts. Because many of these keep popping up in your RCs, and CAT these days has started giving more of AI, technology, business, like topical issues that are there. So, अच्छा, मुझे याद है कि मैं next वाला is something on the US-Israel war. So wait for that. Okay, level of difficulty is moderate. By the way, I'm giving you a heads up. The next two RCs will be slightly difficult level. Not exactly difficult like the Eon ones, but yes, slightly difficult. So watch out for those as well. Chaliye. First things first, let's do this. So, when I take a look at this passage, I put myself in your shoes. Okay, I'm a student. So, when I take, something is there, hang in there, I think it's an ant or something. No, I think it was some hair, like, okay. So, if I take a look at this RC, I know it starts with Europe, and what does it talk about? Something like just at a glance. Fresh China shock, cannibalize local factories, job losses, Beijing, China components, EU, okay, so completely economics related. Something to do with the modern era, right? Because it talks about आपका EU का industrial bloodstream and all, okay? Then trade figures show China's surplus and estimated industrial jobs. China is still massively underweight. So we understand now that it's all about China, something connected to EU, some growth, surplus, okay, something to do with some other countries like Germany and all. Par hai kya? Abhi we don't know. The main idea is not yet under our thumb. Before I read the passage, I go to the questions and take a look at the stems, only the stems, not the options. Based on the passage, the primary structural difference between the first China shock and the fresh dynamic currently facing the EU is what? He's asking us something like, the difference between the first China shock. So, just by checking this question, in a second, I understand that there is something about first China shock, and now there's another shock. Some fresh trade dynamic, maybe that's what the author is going to call the second shock. And who is facing this? The EU, European Union. Okay. Which of the following best characterizes the specific risk posed by the import of low price supply as outlined by the trade consultant in the second para? This is such a respite. Second para related. Right? So, I keep that in mind. Second para. And then, like I have shown you earlier, from every question, I try to take tidbits as I move forward. So now after reading this question, I understand that there is some risk being talked about. Posed by what? The import of low-priced supply. ये तो common sense है ना, low-priced things are imported, so there will be a risk. To whom? The local suppliers will face a setback. There are some other risks also connected. Jैसे imports, if an economy depends very heavily on imports, what happens? The balance of trade gets disbalanced. Right? तो ये सब चीजें तो like general reading में, I'm sure you have come across these. हो गया. So this is para related. It can be inferred from the passage that Andrew Small, specific, happy, views the EU's current legislative strategies such as this with a degree of what? Go to this. And this actually is a tone question, not the author's tone towards something, but Andrew Small mentioned somewhere his attitude, his tone towards EU's current legislative strategies. Unqualified optimism, skepticism, dismissal, theoretical agreement. Okay. And the fourth question, if true, weaken. So this is CR, weaken. Which of the following, if true, I'm sure you know the meaning of this, hypothetically means even if these options are not given in the passage, it's okay. These may be external. Okay, weaken the claim that. So if the claim is given right there in your question stem, I feel happy because then it's an easy question. The growing reliance on Chinese components poses an existential worry for European industry. Right? So he says if the European industry depends too much on China for the components, it poses an existential worry. We have to weaken and say, no, that doesn't matter. Even then, even if it's dependent, it's okay. European industry can manage. It will not be facing any risk. So I know that all these 4 questions are pretty good. However, I would like to do these in a sequence. Sequence is very important. I have said this earlier. How you do your questions is important. I mean, which sequence? Which questions are dumped by you? Which questions are taken up and hugged by you? Very important. So if you ask me my sequence for these 4 questions, like in 1 or 2 seconds, I have to decide this. I'll tell you quickly. I would love to start with this because tone question. More often than not, it's doable if you know the meanings of these words. Okay. Then I would like to go to the second para related. Number 2. Number 3, I would love to do this, and then fourth, my critical reasoning. I generally keep my critical reasoning questions for the end. Critical reasoning में भी अगर assumption है, एकदम end. मतलब strengthen weaken करके बाद में assumptions. Now, let's go back to the passage and see what it is saying, right? So, this is the first para, yes. Are we going to read the whole of it? No. So, I'm going to show you how to skim. What are the important zones? Where are the question pockets? How to glide across the passage by keeping in mind the flow. Just be there with me, okay? Now, Europe is facing a fresh China shock. I'm going to read this para. Scan. China shock. Europe, China shock. Threatens to cannibalize local factories. Okay. Why? Maybe because China is supplying a lot of components and other things at low prices. Cannibalize local factories, leading to job losses and de facto colonization of industry by Beijing. Okay. Trade analysis and this have said. It referred to the impact of China bursting okay, global trade stage, becoming a member okay, soaring imports, displacing local industries and causing okay. Local industries will suffer a setback, so they will definitely be, like people will be unemployed. They may lose their jobs, right? Or they're definitely going to get displaced. Okay. So this person, Jens, the president of this, when people think of China imports, They think of finished goods like EVs. But, very important, that is not where the problem is. It is the sheer volume of components being imported from China. If anything, Europe is getting more dependent on China. He says this. Europe is getting more and more dependent on China, not because of finished products, imports, no, because of components. The main idea should be here or here, right? Here there isn't much. It says, okay, China shock, okay, fine, a fresh China shock. Now, after reading the first para quickly, in let's say 30 seconds, I pause and I'm like, what is he saying? Okay, fresh China shock. That means in one of the paragraphs, he'll talk about the earlier China shock, maybe, and then coming back to the present shock, he'll talk details, right? And I get the main idea here. It's because of the components, right? Okay. As China components are embedded deeper and deeper into the EU's, this EU is facing stark choices. Now I'm going to skim because this is explaining the components, how Europe is getting more and more dependent on Chinese components. Block is considering, okay, 3 different suppliers, okay, all right. Data fine, all right, 96%, okay, less visible. I'll read this. This is the less visible part of the China trade story. The risk is not simply not this, but that. This is more important. You see where I'm putting my car in the first gear and paying attention, where I'm just putting it in the 4th gear and moving forward. This is what you have to learn, right? So the risk is not whatever, nahi dekha maine, right? The risk is what? The risk is that low priced supply gradually makes EU production uneconomic, leaving the union dependent on the very source. What does it mean? Low price supply from China gradually makes EU production, the production that is happening in EU, uneconomic. Means they are not able to compete with the low prices of the Chinese imports, leaving the union, EU, dependent on the very source that displaced it, dependent on China, right? So these 2 lines, the last 2 lines I understood, this line I understood, beech mein I skimmed everything. You too should do the same. Next, trade figures show China's surplus with the EU is ballooning. Okay, China is getting a surplus. It's exporting more. It's ballooning, it's increasing. Andrew Small connected with my question. No need to read everything right now. We can come back for him. The director of this, all okay, holding, all right, import levels, China is now fine, okay, all right, data, all data. Skim. आपके सामने किया मैंने अभी जैसे, ठीक है? So this first line tells me, okay, surplus of China is ballooning. An estimated 250,000 industrial jobs. He said this even in the first, second paras. Obviously, people will lose jobs. So jobs have been lost. Germany, obviously wahi hoga na, because the local industry is suffering a setback. With the sharpest fall, okay, I'm not reading further because I know this para is talking about jobs, employment. So growing reliance, okay, existential, okay, I'll keep this in mind. Continues, okay, very difficult, all right, and it's very significant. Deindustrialization, all right, okay, beyond, fine, okay, issue for Germany. They bring in Germany into the picture. Right here, Germany since 2019, 25, I can get a question around these, or I can get a true-false question. So I just keep in mind what is where. Last para, I'm definitely going to read it. It's a chotu para, I'll read the whole of it. Had it been longer, I would have skimmed some part in between. So China is still massively underweight in the debate about what is happening in European industry. Okay, Small said. What does he mean by this? China is still massively underweight in the debate about what is happening. Aage pad lo. Small said, EU has come up with 2 legislative proposals to try to safeguard the industry. Now this passage also has proposals. The Industrial Accelerator Act, nicknamed Made in EU or Made in India. Law and an update of the Cyber Security Act that would allow companies to stop buying Chinese on security grounds yet. तो यहाँ कहानी खत्म नहीं हुई मेरे दोस्त. Yet. China doesn't need to stop all the new countermeasures the EU has at its disposal. It just needs to snarl up the process with the aim of keeping their exports flowing. So he says here, EU has come up with some proposals. And then he says, yet China doesn't need to stop all the new countermeasures. What does it need to do? This. Small ka portion is here and small ka portion was somewhere here. Right? Now, I'm done reading the passage. And now I'm just going to check what is where. I know the main idea. It's like, okay, China, EU getting more and more reliant on China. So in the end, there are proposals. Okay. And one para talks about jobs, talking about Germany. One para talks about China's surplus and how it's ballooning. Andrew Small hai koi. Okay. And then here we have this components embedded deeper and deeper, facing stark choices. Then there is one important zone here. The risk is not this. Okay. The risk is that low price supply makes EU production uneconomic. Means price-wise, they're not able to fight back. They're not able to compete in the open market. Done. Very neat passage. Now let's go over to the questions and see if the questions are also neat. हमने mark किया था ना ये. अब, in case you're wondering how to mark these questions or how to mark your sequence in the test, well, you've got a rough sheet. I would do like this, before I start my test, I would keep my rough sheet ready. P1, P2, P3, P4 passage. Okay. I would just keep this ready. And then here VA like this. So here I would simply mark, like after checking this passage, okay, let's say this is P2 in my test. So I would simply mark it this way, 3 something something. Like 3 मैंने first बोला है and then so 3, 2, 1, 4. Right. So 3, 2, 1, 4 like this. How much time will it take you? 2 seconds just to write here and there. 2 to 3 seconds every passage. Done. So we'll start with this. Andrew Small views the EU's current legislative strategies such as this with a degree of. So he's given, I mean, this proposal is given in the last para, right? And then he must have said something regarding the Accelerator Act. So I'll just check this, come up with this. Massively underweight in the debate. What is happening? EU has come up with these, safeguard the industry. This, nicknamed Made in EU, update of this. But China doesn't need to stop, right? Snarl up the process. Means China can get the better of this move. Why? Because maybe Small is not sure about these two things. Right? तभी तो ये कह रहा है ना, yet China doesn't need to stop. Had he been admiring of these recommendations, he would have said these will put China in its place very soon. Correct. So चलिए देखते हैं. Back to the question. So, unqualified optimism, believing that labeling items will organically decouple, it will separate. No. There is no optimism as such. Otherwise, why would he say yet China doesn't need to stop? Strategic skepticism. Not sure wala. Keeping in mind that bureaucratic implementation can be easily exploited or slowed down by foreign trade strategies. Now, I like strategic skepticism, but where is this? Maybe connected with the previous paragraphs? I'll check there. Bureaucratic implementation exploited or slowed down foreign trade strategies. Okay, let's eliminate first. Absolute dismissal? No, this is extreme. Asserting that economic dependencies cannot be managed through security? Okay. Dismissal and all is like a little extreme in CAT choices. So I'm left with B and D. Theoretical agreement, assuming that exchange rate stability between trading partners will naturally self-correct the manufacturing deficit. Exchange rate stability, is he worried about that? Not exactly. So, between these two, I like this. Okay, more inclined towards that. Theoretical agreement, had he agreed so much, he would not have said China doesn't need to stop. So, that's why I'm inclined towards this. What am I going to do? I'm going to take this, go back and prove it. I like this already. Strategic skepticism. But why? Keeping in mind that bureaucratic implementation. What is a bureaucracy? The kind that we have in India, the form of government. Implementation can be exploited. Bade babu, chote babu and all. Right. Or slowed down. I'll take you back now. So Andrew Small was introduced here. Right. Dynamics are holding. Okay. Commensurate. Fine. Yahan pe, okay. He's talking about Germany doubled from this. Okay. Now, let's come to this, the jobs wala part. Sharpest fall in car manufacturing, okay, in our business is Small saying something over there. Anything related to, the bureaucracy or foreign trade policies or something. So, sharpest fall, okay. Here this person is there, Escalon, all right. 26% of our members, okay. And Germany, we speak Germany, security issue, all right. So I know that I have to stick here and here because Andrew Small was introduced here. So his portion cannot be before that, right? So I'm going to check these two. एक बार और ये देख लेते हैं. China is still massively underweight in the debate. Why is China massively underweight? Because people are not, the EU is not able to decide completely, or the EU is not moving ahead with the implementation. Right? Small said, okay, 2 legislative proposals, fine, this, made in India law and an update of this, that would allow companies, okay, fine. Now, he says here, made in EU law. I'll show you something here. If you see, there is an inverted, it's in air brackets, nicknamed the made in EU law. So, if something is there in inverted, you have to understand that the tone towards that thing is not completely positive. Okay. So made in EU and an update of the cyber security. Stop buying Chinese on security grounds. Right. अब एक चीज और आपको दिखाती हूं मैं यहाँ. इसमें. Here and here. Like two lines are there. I'll show you. Becoming a member यहाँ पे इसने बोला है. Fine, think of finished goods like these. Okay. ये हो गया. And then here he says, according to report, the bloc is considering, okay, forcing European companies to buy this from, okay. And then he talks about these 3. Then just come here, okay, this portion. Ye wale 2-3 lines hain, just like, we can somehow connect. They have not been said by Small. But why is Small skeptical of what is happening? Or why is he skeptical of these recommendations? Because he knows the situation in the EU. So just be there and check this. About 96% of EU imports by volume come from China. This is the less visible part of China trade story. Okay. So there are things that are brushed under the carpet, or that's like, something which is not brought out in the open. The risk is not simply that EU buys cheap inputs. Okay. The risk is that low priced supply gradually makes this uneconomic, leaving the union dependent on the very source that displaced it. Why is this happening? It is happening because the economy as such is not able to take charge of whatever is happening, right? So we go back to this. Now, between these B and D, theoretical agreement assuming that exchange rate stability, this is definitely eliminated. It's not given there, right? And this one, keeping in mind, यहाँ बोला है from the passage views this such as this with a degree of what? So this is his attitude. Keeping in mind what? Bureaucratic implementation can be exploited. He is not saying that it will be exploited or it is exploited. He says bureaucratic implementation, because he says, na, still China doesn't need to stop. And then he says made in EU wala thing. So that shows his slight pessimism, like, kind of he is being slightly apprehensive, not apprehensive. The right word is, slightly amused and slightly sarcastic about the thing. He knows that it may not go ahead. Yeah. So bureaucratic implementation can be easily exploited, okay, or slowed down by foreign trade strategies. Now, if we talk about foreign trade strategies, this is given overall, right? Slowed down. So bureaucracy, now here we connect with bureaucracy ka literal meaning. Bureaucracy is what? Bureaucracy is, जैसा मैंने आपको explain किया, there are layers in the government, right? So my point here is this bureaucratic implementation can be easily exploited, may not be given there like ekdam clearly in explicit terms, but there are two reasons why we are going with this as the answer. Because this is the one that is left after elimination. Okay. This is perfect strategic skepticism. And the second thing is because this can be inferred from the overall message that the passage is giving you. You can connect it with the main idea. That's why I keep hollering, please improve your main idea. Okay. So B is the best one of the lot. And the level of this question was like pretty moderate if you just know the meanings of these first wala words. ये भी important होता है. You have to read the sentences, the associated sentences. And yes, CAT does give you this kind of a format for tone. But the most important part is this. So I hope this is clear. Okay, how we eliminate it. Then we are supposed to do this now. अब आप देखो. Which of the following characterizes the specific risk posed by the import of low price supply? Second para. Trade consultant में कुछ बोला है ना, right? So let's go back to the second para without worrying about anything. And we are going to check this para once again. Quick reading. अभी तक तुमने देख लिया, पढ़ लिया. Embedded deeper. ये बोला है embedded deeper and deeper into the EU's industrial bloodstream. This again kind of, implies that bureaucratic wala thing, that it is so embedded that it's difficult to bring it out because people are okay with this. People are like, going ahead with this. The EU is facing stark choices. The bloc is considering forcing European companies to buy this, 3 different suppliers. Take amino acids, okay. By value, okay. So where is the statesman, consultant, jisne bola ye? What did he say? He says this is the less visible part. Okay, we don't know. I mean, we are not exactly aware of this part of the China trade story. The risk is not this, buys cheap inputs. The risk is that they are not able to compete price-wise, leaving the union dependent. इतना तो पढ़ लिया, इतना काफी है. So, कह क्या रहा है? What is the risk? Simple language में बोलो तो, what can we infer from the statements, from the consultant, trade consultant's statement? Okay, so it exposes European manufacturers to intellectual property theft through the deep economic integration. Intellectual property theft, okay. It triggers immediate retributive anti-subsidy investigations. Triggers immediate investigations. Are they happening? तो उसने बोला, उसके पहले paragraph ने बोला, it's so embedded in the system by the European Commission. And is it accelerating geopolitical conflicts? Not exactly. It erodes the cost competitiveness, the last 2 lines, of local factories over time, eventually transferring systemic is not systematic, systemic is general, leverage to the foreign suppliers. Okay, ये देखो यहाँ पे. So risk is not this, low price supply gradually, slow process, long term, makes EU uneconomic, dependent on China, right? So like this is completely a rephrased version of that. Erodes this, eventually transferring systemic leverage. Leverage किसको? जो supplier है, to the foreign supplier. This is good. It forces European companies to artificially diversify their inputs. Okay, risk, forces chalega. But then look at this. Artificially diversify their inputs ultimately raising consumer prices on finished goods. How will European companies do this? As it is, they are not able to compete in the open market price-wise. So how can they raise consumer prices on finished goods? Doesn't make sense. This is eliminated and C is the best one. Again, this was very doable. Question number 1. Chaliye. Based on the passage, the primary structural difference between the first China shock and the fresh facing. First China shock and fresh. Now, instead of going back and hunting for it again, you know what the fresh trade dynamic is, right? We just read so many things from the passage. When I come to this question, I would definitely go to the options first instead of jumping back to the passage. चलिए साथ में करके देखते हैं. The initial shock caused severe labor displacement, while the current shock threatens corporate profit margins without impacting this. There is a whole para that talks about this. Jobs have been lost. Okay. Right. So, yeah, they glow up without impacting, eliminated. The historical shock focused on finished products, okay, competing openly on the global stage, whereas the contemporary threat stems from upstream chemical and industrial components, embedding reliance into domestic supply chains, reliance, okay. I'm not yet sure about the first part, but I'm just going to keep this because of the second part. Contemporary threat comes from what? Chemical and industrial components. Components first para last line. Chemical वाला इसने ये जो बोला है यहाँ पर आप देखो, forcing companies to buy components from three different suppliers, amino acids and this, okay, extensively as flavor enhancers in this, ये बोला है इसने, right? So go back to this, okay. I'm going to just retain this for some time. Option C, the earlier crisis resulted in an immediate trade deficit for Germany, whereas the contemporary trend shows German exports to China steadily increasing alongside rising imports. German exports to China. We'll go back and confirm this. So I'm retaining these two. The first trade shock was mitigated effectively by standard European trade tools, while the current influx relies on exchange rate neutralizations that render domestic legislative interventions obsolete. Definitely not the kind of words that we want. Eliminated. Domestic legislative interventions completely obsolete, redundant? No. So I'm left with these two. Hope you understood the process of elimination. Now, between these two, I'm going to take one and try to prove it, right? So, B or C. Now, immediate this, okay, historical shock. Components wala we like, hai na? So, instead of wasting time chasing this, let's first try to prove this. नहीं बना तो फिर कोई बात नहीं, इसको देख लेंगे. So, ये क्या कह रहा है? Historical shock पहला वाला जो था focused on finished products. Competing openly. Contemporary stems from this, अभी हमने देख लिया, embedding reliance into domestic supply lines. चलिए. Threatens to cannibalize, okay. Okay, job losses ये तो है ही. De facto, okay. De facto colonization of industry by Beijing. Trade, okay. It referred to the impact bursting, okay. Impact of China bursting onto the global trade stage after becoming a member of this, with soaring imports displacing this and causing all right. And then he says here, when they think of China imports, they think of this. That means when they think of China imports, they are used to thinking this way. So they are used to this phenomenon. So earlier, this must have happened, right? We get it from here, we infer it from here. So we go back. Now let me just try to mark the things that we have found correct. Historical shock focused on finished products, competing openly on the global stage, de rakha hai. Whereas the contemporary threat stems from upstream chemical, okay, and industrial components, wo bhi diya hai second para, embedding reliance into domestic supply lines. Reliance, ye dekh lo, amino acids, but by this is even more worrying, dependent on the very source that displaced it, right? So from these points, we can easily infer this one, right? Kind of connect, rephrase, okay? So B is good. What is wrong with C? The earlier crisis resulted in an immediate trade deficit for Germany. If we go to this part, Germany wala, yeah, dekh lo, China is now Germany's top trading partner, having overtaken the US. Surplus with Germany doubled from this as imports from this. Surplus with Germany. That means even then, Germany was importing from China. Abhi bhi import kar raha hai. Right? Okay. So this says, kahan gaya ye? Resulted in an immediate trade deficit for Germany. Pehla wala. Immediate trade deficit, but now it has increased. Right. So immediate trade deficit, we are not sure. Data insufficient. Whereas the contemporary trend shows German exports to China steadily increasing. No, it says very clearly here it increased. China's exports to Germany increased, doubled. China's surplus with Germany. So China ka surplus bole to it is exporting more to Germany. Doubled from this to this. Right? So this is out. This is the best one. Hope this is clear. Okay. Now, the last one. Weekend. I think this should be the easiest now because we have already solved 3 questions. है ना? So, बहुत सारी चीजें तो from here and there we know. Let's check this. It says what seriously weakened the claim, which claim? Growing reliance on Chinese components. We already know that. Poses an existential worry. It's given there. For European industry, existential worry is what? They may go out of business, they may become obsolete, they may not be the market leaders, या कुछ भी ऐसा. वो नहीं रहेगा. We have to weaken and say, the reliance is actually good. Or maybe they're not so reliant as you think. Right? So, let's check this now. European factories utilizing Chinese inputs report a massive spike in profit margins, allowing them to reinvest. Okay. Utilizing Chinese inputs. The components. Report a massive spike in profit margins. Okay, good. Allowing them to reinvest capital into advanced automation research. I will definitely keep this. Existential worry kahan ho raha hai? Option B. The physical volume of chemical inputs imported from China remains consistently higher than their financial value on global indices. So, physical volume remains higher. That means they are definitely overly dependent, right? तो ये तो इसको weaken नहीं कर रहा है. This is kind of supporting and saying हाँ ये तो होता ही है, यही हो रहा है. So eliminated. The deindustrialization observed in Germany's automotive sector, okay, it's primarily a cyclical reaction. Deindustrialization is happening there. It's not because of this. If you think, dear Germany, that your deindustrialization of the automotive sector is because of the growing reliance on Chinese components, you're mistaken, because it is a cyclical reaction. To what? To global supply chain restructuring rather than structural component undercutting. Right? Structural component undercutting kya hua? Means the components are coming from China for this automotive industry. So the parts are expensive and so the price of the car goes up. That's why it is deindustrializing. जो इसको automotive industry. And this is kind of this poses an existential threat. So you are saying no. Whatever is happening is because of something else. It's not because of this. So we have got A and C now. Legislative proposals like the Cybersecurity Act take up to 3 years to be fully ratified and not concerned, not connected with the claim. Right? So between these two, how do we eliminate between these two? We look for something that weakens most among the 4. Let's read the 2 again. European factories utilizing Chinese inputs report a massive spike in profit margins, allowing them to reinvest into advanced automation research. Fine. So, look here now. Deindustrialization is happening and they're blaming the components for that and China's trade for that. Okay. Then, because of these components and all, okay, utilizing Chinese inputs report a massive spike in profit margins, allowing them something. ठीक है, reinvest capital. So they report a massive spike in profit margins. Okay, because those parts are good, but ये भी तो consider करना है कि those parts are more expensive according to the passage. And then he says allowing them to reinvest into further automation research. I agree. This is supporting, this is kind of saying, okay, this is not very bad. Existential threat nahi hai. You know, like it is going to be kind of, it's going to stay because you are doing more automation research. But then there's one more point I'll tell you. Automation research is long term. Deindustrialization is happening now in Germany. Okay, an existential threat is there. If you are taking the profit, I mean, if you're trying to weaken with this, and if you're trying to say we take the profit and we pump it into automation research, this research may take another 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. The existential threat still stays. So this is not weakening it completely. Okay. Had the option said reinvest capital into more production, then this would have weakened it. कि भाई आप क्यों कह रहे हो कि existential worry है? No, existential worry nahi hai. They are still producing, they are still manufacturing, they are in the race. But this says research. Research is long term. Okay, so this is eliminated. This is the one that best weakens it because it clearly says it is because of something else. So you are worried saying that, okay, it's because of our reliance on this. No, the slump is there in the industry, but it's cyclical. It will pass, right? So rather than this. Structural component undercutting. Undercutting kisko bolte hain? When a competitor comes in the market, he comes in the market and then he kinds of, cuts our business. So यहाँ पे वही हो रहा है. Structural components are coming into the market and these local industries जो components supply करते हैं, they are not able to compete in the open market. That was happening. So this is the best one that weakens it. I hope all the explanations are clear. Right, everybody? Done. चलिए जाती हूँ मैं, फिर मिलेंगे. And remember what I said, the next two episodes are going to be slightly more challenging, slightly difficult. So join me for those and we are going to have fun again. Take care, keep learning.